Hey everybody, my name is Mike Johnson and this is the Success Estate. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I've got an awesome guest with me. We're going to talk about some awesome things, some great things that will probably affect you. If you are a homeowner or thinking about buying a home, it will most likely affect you. So please stay tuned for a lot of great information and also an interesting conversation. That is my whole forte in this podcast is wanting to not only provide information, but also have an interesting conversation because I just believe that East Texas is interesting. So with no further ado, today I have with me Mr. Geff Grimes. Thank you very much.
You bet. That's a lot of pressure. I've got to be both awesome and interesting.
Well, you know, I tried to select people that I felt like could probably do it without thinking about it.
All right.
So
all right.
All of our conversations have been great and everything.
Too much, so
well,
maybe.
you know, just let it come. You know,
You got it.
When what they say in dominoes, if you study wrong, you study long, you study wrong. So sometimes you just got to play and see what happens.
Let's do it.
Hey. Well, Geff, you want to tell the people how you make your living?
Sure.
And why you're important.
Residential real estate appraiser.
Okay.
And so I'm a certified residential real estate appraiser. So there's a little bit of a difference between a licensed appraiser and a certified appraiser. And primarily it's just the value is kind of where you can't exceed certain values with a license, whereas with a certification,
got you. Sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit to a degree. So
you.
my certification covers anything that the highest and best use is from single to 4-family units.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So from time to time, I will get asked to appraise 30 acres. That's not necessarily the highest and best use. Now, maybe a residential development is.
Sure.
But that needs to go up to the next level.
Got you.
I can do a house once that's been developed, but not the whole 30 acres for future development.
Oh, that's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So is that by your choice? You just don't want to?
No, that's actually a state law.
State law.
Right.
Okay.
So there are limitations put on what each level of certification can do.
Got you. Okay.
And that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm pretty happy.
Okay.
I've
That's what I meant
at-
by like
looked
you just
at kind
said,
of expanding.
this is your lane right here.
For the time right now,
Got you.
I'm happy with what I'm doing.
Got you. And how long have you been?
I was thinking about that this morning. I think 2004 is when I got the call from mom and dad, and we moved back here and started as a trainee.
Okay.
So that makes like 18, 19 years almost.
Sure. How long did you have to train?
I want to say that there's a certain number of hours, and I apologize for not having that memorized.
No.
There's a certain number of hours of course study that we needed to have done, and also a certain number of hours of trainee.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that took 2 years to kind of get that under my belt and get certified.
Sure.
Anymore, you either have to have an associate's degree. I mean, there's all these different criteria, but they've certainly they've certainly changed that up, and we may get into that later on. But so yeah, roughly 18, 19 years.
Got you. 18, 19 years. Personally,
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a residential appraiser, but personally, married, children. Tell us a little about your personal life.
Married. She is the director at prep school in Longview.
Okay.
And I have one 12-year-old daughter.
Nice.
And kind of going back to that, funny thing is I roundabout way started off here at this building.
Really?
So, yeah. So mom sold real estate for a number of years, and dad got early retirement and started selling real estate. Fran and Bunky Grimes.
Okay.
And then my sister got into it, and they were the home team kind of during my teenage years.
Okay.
Selling real estate
Right,
upstairs. So I've spent a little time here.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's interesting. I did not know that.
It's kind of like coming back home in a way.
Sure. Now, is your sister, she still...
I think she still maintains a license, but she lives in Trophy Club. I think she maintains a license just for help
have,
with friends
sure.
out and this, that, and the
Yeah,
other.
definitely. Pick up a house or two every once in a while.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Oh man, that's really interesting. So did you have any desire?
None.
Okay.
None at all.
Was it because of the experience, or it just wasn't interesting to you?
It wasn't interesting to me, probably first and foremost, but like, and things have changed a little bit because your clients are coming to you much more educated than people who were looking for houses were prior.
Mm-hmm. Because of access, you meaning because of access?
Right. They
to
know more about the house probably than you do.
And I actually had that conversation a lot. People will come and I'm like, listen, I'm just going to guide you. You tell me what it is you're looking for. I'm going to kind of guide you. But yeah, definitely, people are super informed when they're coming in.
I can remember it was the day before some holiday, so maybe it was like the day before Thanksgiving, maybe it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, or maybe it was Christmas Eve. I don't remember. But we're sitting down about to have dinner, and the phone rings, and Mom gets a call that some people want to go look at property. And I can remember, and she remembers this, the words coming out of my mouth, I will never have anything to do with real estate. And I can't remember what age that was, but
it's so
here
interesting.
I am.
It's so interesting how those experiences shape you.
Sure.
And shape your decision. I mean, it's really your values that are speaking at that moment. What it is that you value, which it sounds like family time. You said you remember, when y'all moved back here, it seems like family is pretty important to you, but also to maybe having your time.
Absolutely.
So it's so funny how those things kind of shape your decision making, especially when you have, because it sounds like your parents were pretty successful. As agents.
You bet.
And your sister, it's to see a success road in front of you and say, I don't want anything to do with that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And
interestingly enough, is I kind of lost my train of thought, but interestingly enough, they I don't know. I kind of lost where I was going.
That's okay. Well, thank you for giving us some background, on speaking of your time. I know as an agent, I'm pretty much, somebody asked me the other day, like, hey, what are your hours? I'm like, I'm pretty much always on the clock. I try to create boundaries up front with, not boundaries, expectations up front with clients. Since I've started, I've always said, hey, I kind of reserve Sundays unless you absolutely need me. If you don't have another day, I totally understand. We'll work something out. But I try to reserve one day. What's the life of an appraiser?
That takes me back to where my previous train of thought was my personal time.
Sure.
That's why I love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
If I get hung up on something, I can step out of the office. I office out of the house or out of the property.
Mm-hmm.
I can step out and go mess with the weeds, or go do this or that, and come back to it. But as far as my time, and I don't even pay attention anymore. But my phone is set up to shut off at 5:00, and not shut off, but
right,
to where it goes into whatever that it is, private mode or whatever it is.
Right.
And that was through years, and primarily it was once I had a kid, it became much more important
Sure.
to me. But it came through years and years of continuing to receive calls at 7:00 or questions about this or that at 8:00. And I kind of came to the realization that just because we all have cell phones, we've all bought into this, doesn't necessarily mean that you get to get into all of my time.
Right. It doesn't grant you access to me at all points.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And not being in a sales type of position, I'm able to go, we're shutting this down at this particular time.
Sure. Because, at the end of the day, a lot of times those things can't wait,
And they have a way of resolving themselves.
They do have a way of resolving themselves as well.
And you learn that over time as you get older, too, that everything doesn't have to happen right this minute.
Sure.
You can let it kind of take its course and see if it cleans itself up.
So am I hearing a little, I don't know, not animosity, but a little resentment towards phones and the access that, that people, not in like an ugly way, but in a way of like, times were better when we didn't have, and I'm fortunate enough to remember when we didn't have cell phones. My children will never know what it's like to have to answer the house phone or have to wait till somebody gets home to call
cord
them,
and
the
all that.
long cord.
Yeah.
You know, I remember even the first car phone we had. And I thought that was the most amazing thing ever. Now I'm looking at it, I was like, oh man, that's a dinosaur.
Yeah.
But you know, does it bother you at all? This is just kind of random.
No, it really doesn't. I look at it and think we're in a wonderful, wonderful time. I mean, when do you really want to go back to? I mean, you know what I mean? Sure, there's lots of problems.
Yeah.
But when do you really want to go back to?
I don't know.
I think we're at a wonderful time. We're just as a species going to have to figure out where to departmentalize our time and this is for this and this is for that and it's a tricky thing. This is all new and it's coming so quickly.
I mean, they're coming out with new and different things like all the time. It seems like I was just telling I don't know if you're aware of like even like the artificial intelligence things that are coming out.
Just messed with it for the first time.
You did? I did as well.
Yeah.
I did as well. And it's actually very interesting.
Oh, it's good.
I can see the downsides of it, but also too, I can see a way to get some of my time back. Mm-hmm. You know, how do you feel about things like the Chat GPT, OpenAI? Do you feel like it's going to be something that can help you in your business?
I think it's probably going to put me out of business.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think your position, me personally, I think your position, because this AI can't go out to the property.
No.
At that point, now I can see how. No, I mean not even that. Unless they put
you really
legs
don't think
on this
you can
thing.
have a drone set to have an appointment at 6:00 to come through the house?
No, I don't.
I'm
then at the end of it,
you're
still gonna have to. There's still gonna have to be somebody that can
smell the house. Is
they
what
can
I call
smell
it.
the house exactly. That can come in and get a really good feel for what they're seeing. I mean, because I could see. I mean, if a drone is flying through, oh yeah, I can trick this drone. Mm-hmm. You know, I can put up something for right now. You know, and I won't have to worry about anything showing up subject to, you know, any repairs, anything. So I personally think, you know, a job like or a position like yours will still be critical, you know, at the end of the day, because you just can't. Unless this thing grows legs, unless OpenAI, ChatGPT, unless it grows legs, I don't see those kind of things happening. But they do have a ton of different uses for AI.
What I'm kind of thinking may happen, at least in my working time, and I have no plans of retiring. That's a whole other conversation. But I have no plans of completely retiring.
Sure. You're gonna be like Mr. Thiemann around here. It seems
maybe.
It seems like he's been going for a long time from the stories that I've heard.
He has.
And every time I hear he's retiring,
is that right?
Going. He's still going.
I think we may end up doing essentially what you're saying, going to the house, taking photos, taking notes, maybe even drawing the house. I don't know. At some period of time, there's already software that you can walk into a place.
Right.
Which we're not allowed to use. They jumped on that pretty quick.
Oh, really?
Said,
How would they know?
You have to do a thing called the ANSI standard, which is the way I was trained to measure houses.
Sure.
But I came into this thinking that was the way you were supposed to. That was by law the way you did it. Well, come to find out that wasn't the way that you're required to do it, but it is now.
Wow.
To get ahead of that.
Sure.
Is my interpretation of what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to get ahead of that. But I think that we will probably still boots on the ground show up at the property, but is that worth to the lender or to anybody else what it's worth today? And, you know, I'm not out to hide anything. My base fee is $500.
Sure.
Are you going to pay me $500 to show up and take some pictures of a house? No.
I don't know.
We'll see.
Because there's a lot riding.
I hope you're right.
I hope so too. We'll see.
Out.
You know, and what's great is we got this recorded. We'll be able to come back to this in 10 or 12 years. Because I mean that technology is, I mean, it's going to boom so quickly.
I had a difference, and you've run into this. I had a difference between the county, my measurements, and the blueprints. I had access to all three of them. Guess what? All three of them were different.
What?
Oh, that's very, very common. And so I had to write this. The underwriter wanted a long explanation, or wanted an explanation of why this was.
Right.
And I sat there and worked on it, or thought about this thing, how to, you're kind of putting it together in your mind. And I thought, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. So I put a prompt in Chat GPT, and sure enough, I mean, I'm just sitting there watching it go.
Yep.
I changed one word. They were looking at it from a transaction standpoint.
Sure.
So they were using it was using the term they. It was using the term buyers and sellers, and I changed it to interested parties, because it's not always in my situation. It's not always a buyer and a seller. That was the only thing I changed. Other than that, it was spot on.
I mean, I took my blog from a year before, so we're changing websites, and I took my blog from the year before, and I added in, I said, hey, is there a way to make this more clear? Cleaned it right up. I was like, man, I wish I could just talk like this normally, and so I didn't feel bad, because it was like, okay, I did write it. It changed some things, to make it sound more clear. And I don't know, part of me wants to like have some kind of integrity to know, like, oh yeah, I at least tried. It's not like, hey, give me an article. Some people are just saying, hey, give me an article on such.
Sure.
I'm just like, whoa, that's. I mean, I don't know that
the style of William Blake,
in
please.
the style, right? Exactly. And I actually, I can't even remember the topic, what it was, but I said, hey, can you explain maybe homestead exemptions and make it sound like William Shakespeare? It just went through that. I was like, I can't believe this.
I know.
It sounds like some writings from William Shakespeare.
I know.
And it's all amazing, and it's kind of scary at the same time. It's
fascinating
like, man,
and frightening.
Fascinating and frightening, and because it's coming and you can see the potential of things spiraling so quickly, moving so quickly. Technology, they're already stacking technology up on this base. Technology
that's available to the consumer.
It's
already advanced beyond that they haven't made available to the consumer yet.
Exactly. This is the free version.
Yeah.
They're sliding you the free version. Work out the kinks. Give us a feedback back so that you can, so we can charge you for it in a little while. And it's going to become an integral part of life. That's kind of looking into the future. But let's go back in the past for a couple years. And you probably can give a good comparison of what life was like pre-COVID. COVID was just, when I talk to people about what happened in 2020, I guess it's 3 years now. Man. For the past 3 years, 2.5 years, because I feel like the last couple months things are starting to settle again, but just bonkers. Times bonkers. Everything was going quickly at super high prices compared to the years before. Tell us a little bit about your experience on the appraisal side, 2020 up till now.
Okay. On the appraisal side, so in terms of values, or in terms of how it impacted my job?
Well, just how it impacted your job, and we'll talk about the values and things like that in a little bit, but how it impacted your job and your time that you value so much. Because we got a ton of purchases, and then also a ton of refinances.
Right.
So how did that affect you?
I didn't let it. I sincerely didn't let it,
sure.
and that has pros and cons to it. As I kind of stated, I am a little bit concerned about how long they're going to keep us appraisers around. There's not enough of us, for one thing, and that's nothing new. I think everybody knows that.
Sure.
But I really did a good job of. Because we've stayed so busy for so long, did I get a little busier? A little bit busier, but when I could feel it taxing me, I've just gotten very good at that. I mean, I've just kind of become a little self-aware and realized, no, I'm not going to let myself go nuts during this period of time. funny kind of thing that happened during that is, there was a period of time where everybody locked down, like everything was closed, everything locked down, except essential workers. We were considered essential workers,
Right,
so we're still going out to properties. Some lenders just had us do sort of like drive-by inspections, and then have the property owners send us photos.
Wow.
Some lenders did that. Other lenders kind of left it up to our discretion of how we wanted to handle that. I tended to told them all the precautions that I was going to take, and then let the property owner figure out what they want to do. Some went out to the yard, some stayed in the house. I mean, just like everything else in the world, you had different people who reacted different ways. But I do fully remember, I'm in a text group with a couple of peer appraisers that I can remember. We just kind of thought, oh gosh, we thought the exact opposite. We thought everything was just going to shut all the way down, and I think it would have had the Fed not stepped in and done some things to keep things moving. But yeah, I mean, as far as work goes, I just didn't let it eat
because
me up.
you get a chance to decide which jobs you take on.
Right.
What is the process of somebody getting an appraisal report from you? What is it?
Typically, so if you're doing a refinance or you're purchasing a home, go to a lender, and once all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, then they send out a request for an appraisal.
Sure.
And anymore, this is a relatively new thing. Don't ask me how long it's been going on, because one foot in front of the other. But lenders are required to have a stable, if you will, of appraisers, and that should be rotating. And so,
is that for bias, like to say like, hey, we're not biased, we're not just picking one
exactly
appraiser
and that was definitely happening.
Sure.
There's no doubt in my mind that was definitely. And I consider myself an honest person, but I know that even at that time, I had to have been doing some lenders most of their appraisals, because you're just getting several of them a day or whatever. Are you really doing that many loans?
Right.
And maybe they were.
Right.
But I don't know. So yeah, I definitely do think that probably needed to happen. So, and it works different ways. Some lenders will send it directly to me, and in other cases, they want you to bid on them. And so you kind of go back and forth on a date with the lenders who are asking, it's your turn, and they're asking you to do it. You kind of go back and forth on fee and turn time.
Right.
Obviously, on the bids, they're looking for the lowest. You assume they're looking for the lowest bid and the quickest turnaround time.
Sure.
And so during COVID, there were truly periods of time, I guarantee you, I was turning down more work than I was taking in.
Right.
And that wasn't just a personal choice. It would have been humanly impossible
for me
to have done everything that was coming in and do it well.
That was
my
my
other
concern.
key to the thing, is that if I'm doing too much,
how can you?
I don't have the confidence that I'm doing each one of those as well as I possibly could.
Right. That was probably my biggest concern. And really, it was so funny because there's no quick fix for that. We were all constantly waiting on appraisal, and I'd have to warn buyers and sellers, hey, we're just gonna have to give the appraisers time. There's nothing we can do. We have to have this part. But in the back of my head, I'm always thinking, if you've got a bunch, and if you've got a bunch of reports to put, and your reports are not 100 word.
Oh no. Yeah.
It's detailed.
Yeah.
I imagine you're having to do research and different things like that. I mean, I in my head, I'm like, how can anybody keep up with what's going on in the market right now, especially with the amount of like refinances and things like that we had coming on. As far as, I know you're talking about your we talked about your time and you taking on more opportunities, like home values spiked pretty quickly.
They did. I knew we were going to get here, and so I just did some quick little research just in the Longview Area Association of Realtors MLS. All right, I put in no criteria other than single family residential.
Right.
So I don't care if there's 10 square feet or 10,000 square feet.
And is this Longview specifically,
No,
or just
so it is
the
the whole
okay.
area that the Association of Realtors covers. And just for if you don't know, that's anywhere from Smith County to Wood County, Upshur County, Harrison County. It's a broad area.
Right.
All right. So 2019, there were 3,400 total transactions of single family residences. The median value was $170,000. So we get to 2020, and there were 3,600 total transactions. Okay, so 200 more.
Sure.
Median price was $184,000. That went up 13% from 2019. 2021, roughly 4,000 total transactions. Median price $218,500. So we went up another 19%. 2022, total number of sales actually goes back down by 300-400. Median price is $247,000. So that's up another 13%. So it's steadily gone up in the double digits.
Right.
And, I didn't look at 18. We could sit here and do this all day long.
Sure, of course,
but,
of course.
I didn't look at 18, but just to give you an idea, up 13% 2020, up 19% 2021, up 13% in 2022.
I guess, what comes to mind is, on your side, I've always been taught that buyers determine the value of a home. Okay, if buyers are willing to pay it, not necessarily, they can do whatever they want, but buyers are establishing, whether or not, this price is valid based on what other buyers are doing in the area. But we had people coming in dropping $20,000 extra on an asking price.
If you have the cash, you are determining what the value is. If you're borrowing money, a third party uninterested in it is coming and going.
Exactly. So, but I mean, eventually it did. I saw some that, hey, this, the house did not appraise for the $20,000 over that you were willing to offer, but it did go up 13 to 14,000 over asking price. So it's like the appraisers were like trying to say, hey, not so fast.
But at the same time, I did have things like, so I started hitting up agents whenever I saw in the MLS that it was listed at X and it sold for X. Okay, clearly you had multiple offers.
Right.
And they would say, I said, you don't need to send me the whole thing, but send me page 1 of all your offers. And I would use, you can't put those in the report, but I would say, in my work file, I have this many offers for this house. I don't have the comps to confirm that this house is worth this, but the market has said that this house is worth that. I bet I did that a handful of times. Never loved it. Never, because I'm, like you said, it's just not in me. It's not the way we're trained to do it. But that was clearly the market was speaking, and the comps were not keeping up.
Right.
With what the prices were doing.
Because we were still so low on listings.
Yeah.
And that was, I would tell, people, constantly, when I was working with sellers, I would say the one thing I don't want to do is sell you short. But, if we're just competitive, the market is just going to come in and let us know what this house is worth, And I kind of, without necessarily doing I don't like doing like predictions per se. Just kind of how I feel things are headed. It looks like we got a new normal in prices. A lot of people are talking about, crashes and things like that. And I'm just, they've been talking about that for the past, year or so now. Yeah. The crash is coming. And I'm like, I don't see, maybe I don't understand the crash. When 2008 happened, I was just coming out of high school. I only remember thinking, oh man, as soon as I got my license, the gas prices went up. So that's my only framework,
Yeah.
as far as experience. I read about, the crash of what happened and why, in the housing market that needed to be regulated differently, as far as with lenders and things like that. And I thought that was a crash. What I'm looking at now, I'm just like, what I'm experiencing does not feel like a crash. This just feels like, hey, we're just coming back to some kind of reality. But at the same time, it seems like a new norm is set for what buyer expectations should be as far as paying. Buyers are saying, hey, it's not like it was in 2018. I'm willing to, pay a little bit more.
Right.
So all of that is just super interesting to me, as far as the past 2 years. Were there any other things that that you found unusual in comparison to your first 16, 17 years?
Well, a lot of that time, the interest rates have been pretty low. And so my work has not been, real estate has not been cyclical, or shouldn't say that. My work has not been cyclical.
Sure.
I can remember when it was. I can remember having lots of time in February for myself, and just jumping on a thing whenever it became available.
Sure.
This is the first time in many years that this feels like, okay, this is actually the way it's supposed to be, because the interest rates have gone up a little bit.
Right.
And they're still not that high.
Right.
But people are just freaking, I'm not going to be the idiot who, but
I heard that there were people, before paying like 8, 9, 10% in interest.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? To me, that's unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like, we bought ours, I think we were in the in the mid 3s. Or no, we were in the at the low 4s. And then we got it refinanced over to the mid 3s, back in 2019. So all of this, I'm
but
hearing
we still
about
refinanced it. People still purchased
They
homes
still
at
did
9,
it.
10,
They still
13%.
did it.
It
They
still
still
happened,
did
and we'll get there again. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of the shock of it right now. But this is the first time I can remember it being slow when it was supposed to be slow, and it's hard to calibrate the mind. It's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody
that
doesn't
was
hate me all of a sudden all at once.
Right.
I can only pick them off one at a time
Sure,
and make
sure,
them hate me one
sure,
at a time. But
sure.
no, this is the way it's supposed to be.
Speaking of which, I'm sure you kind of have to have some thick skin as an appraiser.
Yeah.
Agent appraiser relationships can be testy. It seems like. How has that been for you? What have you had pretty rough experiences with agents? And I'm not asking you to call anybody by name.
No.
Just
I know. Yeah, maybe a handful or so. But not that many. And again,
I don't know.
I'm not
Are you
gonna,
on TikTok
I'm not
at all?
gonna name, no.
Yeah, any of a lot of the social, which like I said, I'm
And
gonna
that's
get
the
to
thing that I don't.
I mean, you see, appraisers get to be the butt of jokes.
Gotcha.
On a lot of those,
Sure.
and I don't think it's really as bad as people make it out to be. On there, it's just easy. Appraiser kind of low hanging fruit, I guess I would say, and that I can make a silly video saying that I'm waiting on the appraiser, or I'm upset with appraiser ruined my deal. It's kind of low hanging fruit.
Sure.
So I didn't know if that really translated into the real world. And I know everybody's different. Everybody's got different experiences, but I was just wondering from your experience, were you seeing?
And there's something to that though that might make me a little bit different than some. I mean, I can tell you because I've headed up some committees and whatnot of appraisers, and I'm not going to name any names,
Sure.
but there are some God complexes out there. There are some people who truly believe that, they're right. And that was difficult for me to work with other appraisers and sit and listen and have conversations with people, because you're just kind of like, number one, I know I'm not infallible. And number two, I was kind of raised by realtors. And so I have the other side of it.
Right,
And beyond that, and some, some are starting to retire and whatnot, but also I have a lot of friends who are realtors.
Yeah.
And a lot of family friends who are realtors. And so maybe I've been able to avoid
Sure.
some of that from personal relationships or whatever. I don't know. That's not to say I haven't had them, but I can't sit here and remember really any that I was just from my end of it that kept me up that night.
What about directly with homeowners? Did you ever have? Because I mean, if somebody's getting there, they come in, they order an appraisal.
Those can be a little bit more prickly.
Really?
And what's often interesting to me is to see that property come up on the MLS, like if you do a refinance for something.
Right.
I mean, I can.
Right.
And they go both ways, but I've had more than a few situations where my value came in at X. They argued and argued and argued. And then, a few months later or a year later, whatever, they go to sell the house and it sold for less than I had it appraised for. But on the other hand, what I also see...
Want to make a call, block your number. I told you.
Right. But on the other hand, some things that happened more so during that COVID time is that they would be refinancing. I would go and do the appraisal, and a month later, you see it on the market. So they got the value and went, woo!
What am I doing?
Right, let's do it. Let's get out of here.
That's interesting, and I couldn't blame anybody for taking advantage, and not a negative way, but taking advantage of the opportunity of those house sales. I mean, it was truly a phenomenal time to experience, especially because I went full time in December of 2019. So I had about 3 months of regular real estate business, and then the COVID ball dropped, and I'm wondering like, oh, wait a minute. I remember telling my wife, hey, I think I'm gonna need to start looking for jobs because I can't see if anybody buying a house. If you can't go anywhere, how are you gonna buy a house?
Right.
And like you said, the Fed came in and was of course the real catalyst for things taking off the way it did in the real estate market. And I was constantly telling people like, hey, you might as well jump in. I mean, you really kind of at the same place. People would come in and they, oh yeah, the low interest rates. I was like, yeah, but you're paying so much more for the house. We're still kind of at the same place. So, if you're not moving or anything like that, I would tell people, go ahead, get in here, but you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be patient on the house hunting side because there's not many houses. You're going to have to be patient in the contract because there are plenty of places where we can get hung up. I remember at one point having to push a contract out like 2 weeks, waiting on the appraisal report. And I totally understood. Some guys would tell me like, hey, listen, I'm just behind. And I do think that there were some appraisers that were taking just about everything they
I know
could.
there was.
Which is I don't know what there is to do about it.
Tell me the fix. I don't know what
I don't know what it is. You did need somebody to do it, and like you said, there is I don't know if it would be considered anymore, but at that point it seemed like a shortage of appraisers. And so even to that, like, in my head, I'm like, man, we need more appraisers. But then I'm like, okay, when things come back down like they're doing now, when things are starting to level out,
right.
I mean, days like today, you may not have as much,
right?
So then it doesn't seem like we're at a shortage. But I know they made a lot of changes around the country as far as appraisers and what it takes to become appraiser, become licensed. I don't know what did you become first, licensed or certified? What?
Well, I mean, there's the states are in control of
okay.
Each of those.
Well, to become a licensed appraiser, I believe they made some changes here in Texas as well, as far as like the barriers to get into appraising.
A look behind the curtain. So I kind of had some topics that were sent to me that we might touch on it. So I was like, okay, I haven't looked at this in so long because I haven't been paying. I'm in. So I went back to go and see if I saw anything that looked particularly new to me, and I didn't see anything that looked particularly new to me outside of what I kind of already knew was that they were requiring either a bachelor's degree in anything or an associate's degree in these particular things.
Okay.
I got in before that. I don't have either. So I got in before that was a requirement.
How did you come about
So
becoming an appraiser?
I was in the music industry actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay.
And doing okay.
Sure.
We'd bought a house. My wife was an educator.
Okay.
We were doing okay, but not really getting ahead. And I mean, there's a whole long thing.
Sure.
But at any rate, my mom and dad got out of selling real estate, got into appraising real estate, started thinking about getting out of appraising real estate. Hey, is this something you might be interested in? And I remember we were on the patio while we were on the phone, and I was like, well, I have to think about that.
Yeah.
My wife did not have to think about that.
He'll be there tomorrow.
we are going back to Longview, and we are doing this. And she had been a tremendous sport. She had never said, and still has never said anything derogatory about the direction I was heading. Hey, we gave it a shot, but even she was like, okay, yeah. It's time to
This
move
is the
on.
opportunity we're looking for.
Right.
We were looking for.
Right. And so I had the privilege of having a family that was in it who said, do you want to do this?
Right.
And doing all my training through them. And then I'm taking classes with people from the DFW area who are paying appraisers to train them.
Wow.
So that's how difficult it is to get into it.
Sure.
And then you add on top of it that you have to have a degree.
Mm-hmm.
There's some older appraisers who think that it adds another level of legitimacy to the profession, and I understand that thinking. But at the same time, how many people want to go put on some college debt and come in and take in an appraisal position?
Right.
I'm doing fine.
Right.
All right, I'm very happy. But if I were throwing on top of my regular expenses some college debt, I would find something else a little more lucrative than appraising real estate.
I didn't know that. And I mean, that would have, somebody was asking me the other day, about being an agent. I said, I probably would have taken, had I known the opportunities that were out there in just the whole real estate sphere, I probably would have started.
Everybody who's out to grab a little piece.
Right. I probably would have started. I would have wanted to be an appraiser first if I knew what. And I feel like there's a little more pressure in being an appraiser, and probably a little more, maybe more detailed than I would tend to like to be. Mm-hmm. But it would be appraiser, inspector, or maybe pest inspector above even an inspector, and then real estate agent. All those others, I don't think any of those others require a degree. Like, I didn't have to have a degree to become an agent. And to hear that, I'm like, I don't know that makes sense.
Right.
To, like you said, to come and take on. I don't have anything against getting a degree. I don't necessarily. I come from, of course, the time period where it was big push. College, where are you going to college? What are you going to do?
Sure.
I played basketball, and I never forget when I got when I decided which major I was going to take on when I went to school. Was my junior year of high school. Going into my junior year of high school, in 8th grade, 9th grade, I always had some entrepreneurial classes that I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And me being naive, we were at a basketball camp. And I was a pretty good player for the area. And I remember we had, in order to play in the tournament or in the camp, you had to say, it was at LSU Shreveport.
Yeah, LSU used to have a heck of a basketball camp.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. And so in order to participate, you had to fill out a card. Hey, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to study when you get there? And I remember being, wait a minute, I don't know. And I put entrepreneurship. I want to study entrepreneurship. And somebody came to me and they said, well, there's no such degree as entrepreneurship.
So they're actually reading through these things.
Yeah. So
Okay,
and
all right.
well, and this was as I was filling it out.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'll never forget. A cousin of mine was sitting right next to me, and I said, "Hey man, what are you gonna put?" He said, "Kinesiology, because I want to coach." I was like, "Well, I can see myself coaching." I had no plan for. I had no understanding of kinesiology. I said, "Well, I'll put that too." And I, by golly, I graduated with a kinesiology.
Did you
degree.
really?
Yeah, but when I got to my senior year and I started thinking, okay, what jobs can I get with this degree? In my head, it was just get a degree. I was like, what jobs can I get with this degree that I've taken debt on for? And one of them was teaching, and my cousin told me about some of the hours he would put in as a coach. I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm like you.
Right.
I want my time
Right.
as much as possible. If I'm going to spend my time, I want to spend it doing the things that I feel are beneficial.
Sure.
So I said, well, I don't want to be a teacher, coach. I don't want to be in the school system. I don't like working out. So, being a physical trainer, that's not really, I would be lying. I would be a hypocrite. Yeah. And then to go like to physical therapy school, occupational school, you had to have really great grades. And I did not. Mm-hmm. I was par. That's
Sure.
all I was.
Sure.
So I got to the end of it. I said, why did I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look back and I talk to people about being an agent or being in the real estate field, I said, man, there's opportunities out there that you could take on, that won't require you to go to school. Actually, a young man texted me this morning, hey, I just passed my exam. He's 18 years old. He graduated at 17. He can go in the workforce and start making money. But hearing that I would have had to go 4 years to turn around and do another, 2 years?
Right. Of free work.
Of free work.
Uh-huh. How many people are going to sign up for that?
I don't know.
That's a hard sell.
I don't know. And see, I had no understanding. I remember asking you about, hey, becoming an appraiser. And now I realize I didn't have any understanding of what it took to become an appraiser. Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of people, coming to you asking, hey, can my apprenticeship be under you?
It has definitely slowed down, but there was a period of time where I would probably get a call at least once a month, mm-hmm. and every time I was like, am I making the wrong decision here? When I first got into it, I'm gonna blow this thing up. Mom and Dad didn't know what they were doing. I'm gonna blow this up, and we're gonna take everything that comes in, and I'm gonna get trainees under me and all this. And as time went on, and through trying this and that, I said, no, I kind of like I like my free time.
Yeah.
But every time that I said no, I wondered if I was making a personal poor decision, and secondarily, am I making a poor decision for our region because we do need appraisers?
Sure.
Does it have to fall on my shoulders to fix the problem? Maybe it does.
Are
Maybe
you the chosen one?
Right. And so I would spend time before, I'd get the call. I'd spend a little time thinking about this before I would, get back in touch with the person and ultimately say, let me give you a number of a couple other people who I think take on trainees. But I'm pretty happy doing it the way I'm doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so as far as the business of being an appraiser, would you look back and say, hey, there would be anything that you would change as far as the career path that you've taken?
As far as being an appraiser?
Being an appraiser, or I know you just said a second ago you were talking about hey, mom and pop, they didn't. It sounds like you're speaking business wise, like, hey, this has the opportunity for growth that they may not have wanted to take on, and it turns out they were right.
Yeah. I have maintained for this amount of time that I've been in this, and because some banks have changed and some have changed the way that they do things, I looked at it fairly recently. I have kept 7 clients happy for 17 years. Mm. That's huge. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty darn big. I really only work for local and regional lenders.
Right.
Anytime I've tried or stepping outside of that, like, like, ooh, no. I'm coming back in here, because you can't explain to an underwriter in Chicago our market. I mean, it's just, you can, but it's not worth the time.
Yeah.
Whereas I can be keeping my local lenders pretty happy.
Sure.
Man, as far from a professional standpoint, I mean, I tell, used to tell Dad all the time, and I tell Mom all the time. I mean, they handed me a golden ticket. I had some friends come in for their 30th reunion, and man, you're doing really great. I said, this was all handed to me, and it was, and that doesn't mean that I haven't worked.
Sure,
because I've
worked.
But
they paved the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's so important. You know, when you think about, you know, family and legacies and, you know, and doing for your children, part of what I'm doing now, I mean, my boys are often with me, you know, while I'm going to showings. It's much easier for me to take the boys than it is for my wife. Our parents both live close, but they live 20 minutes either way.
Sure.
You know, so it's like, hey, I'm not going to take 40 minutes of driving to show a house for 30 minutes. Let's just take the boys with me. And then also, too, you know, they kind of got to the routine where they would say, oh, Dad, we're going to the house. You know, okay, hey, can I unlock the door? You know, okay, can I come in and turn on the lights? You know, and they may end up, you know, having the same conclusion about being an agent as you did. Like, hey, this is just not me. But the exposure, you know, the more and more that I feel like I can expose them, the greater the opportunity they have, especially if I can create a path where, hey, Mike Johnson has a good name in the community. Oh, hey, here's his son. He seems to have the same values. Here's one of his sons. They have the same values. You know, maybe that will help, you know, create some opportunities.
Absolutely.
You know, I think that that's so important. And was that something that you've ever discussed with your parents, if you don't mind me asking? Like, hey, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, were they intending to create that for y'all, or were they, hey, we're making a living, and it just so happened that they did such a great job that it led y'all to your path?
I don't know that it was intentional. I mean, most of my life, Dad was a supervisor at a aluminum can plant here in town, worked nights.
Oh yeah.
And Mom taught some piano and was a choir director at church.
Okay.
So I don't know that it was ever intentional.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just like what you're doing.
Sure.
It's just watching how they were in the world.
Right.
And like you said, just like your boys are watching how you are in the world, that's
sure.
I don't think you can say enough about that.
Right.
And the other side of my family is kind of all in education, and you know, from your wife being in education, you hear all kinds of stories.
You do.
The good,
you do,
and the really bad,
yeah,
and the ugly, and you.
It's hard to find the in between. As a matter of fact,
yeah,
everything is either great or.
But they're watching you.
They are,
and whether you like it or not, and whether they're watching you.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, to answer that, now I don't feel like that it was an intentional thing.
Sure.
But I definitely, again, walked into a situation where my parents' reputation preceded me, and the path was laid for me. It was laid for me professionally, and it was laid for me as far as an expectation of conduct and ethics and whatnot.
Yeah. Speaking of conduct and ethics, you know, there have been some recent, you know, complaints about appraisers, not in our area. I haven't seen anything in our area, but I've read articles before in the past couple of years where, you know, there will be a complaint that, hey, you know, for context, well, let me say, so I've read two separate articles that pretty much said the same thing. Here's a black family or an interracial family. They have their home appraised for whatever reason. The appraisal comes back lower than what they were expecting based on what the limited knowledge that they had of the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
they get the house appraised again or multiple times. Still same results. Then they remove their pictures from the home, and all of the next appraisal report that they get, it's at a value that they were expecting,
Sure,
much higher than the ones before. I'll tell you, I can see some possible scenarios. I won't say that. I won't try to absolve anybody of any wrongdoings. Bias is out there. Prejudice is out there. It's alive and it's real. I could also see some scenarios where, hey, this could have been a not a misunderstanding on the appraiser's part, but a misunderstanding on the buyer's part. Are you familiar with those?
I am.
And what are your thoughts, without trying to put any blame or anything? What are your thoughts on those situations, as far as the information that was in those articles?
Just as you said, there are racist appraisers. There are racist waiters. There are racist.
Sure,
I mean, it's alive and well. I think it's slowly getting squished out, but it exists.
It's hard to hide.
Sure,
it's hard to hide.
Having said that, and that may very well have been the case in the scenarios that I'm familiar with, but none of the reporting that I've seen in any of the writing identifies. It's like I'm on the inside, so I know what to look for.
Right.
You know what I mean? As far as, okay, could have been this, could have been that, could have been this, and again, it could have been a racist appraiser. You know, it very well could have been. But there's just so many things in the reporting that, okay, well, this happened in 2020, and just as we looked at, things are just shooting up. So there could have been a difference between here and now. What I don't ever see is this was done in June, and then they had it reappraised. Did they have it reappraised 2 months, 2 weeks later, 2 months later?
Right.
And it kind of matters.
Sure.
To the degree, to $100,000 degree,
sure.
I don't know about that.
And that's kind of what the amount of money, kind of keeps me on the side of, this may have been somebody's personal bias, whether that be racism or prejudice or whatever that may be. But then at the same time, when I produce a comparative market analysis, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes without as much detail.
Sure.
I know, and I tell several sellers about this. Hey, this house that is most like yours was sold 5.5 months ago, or 5 months ago. We have a small window, because and would I be correct in saying that you normally go back about 6 months? Is that a? I was taught that
during this COVID time, and yes, I mean the more recent, obviously, the better. The de facto has been 12 months.
12 months, okay.
Anymore, even if it's not as comparable, it all kind of depends, because this is kind of an art and a science all at the same time.
I understand.
But if I can grab something in the neighborhood that's pretty comparable to it from the last 90 days, I really want to put it in there.
Right.
It's probably not going to be, if it's not the most comparable house, it's probably going to be like number 4 or 5. It's not going to be in the top 3, so to speak. But as far as dates go anymore, and that's one of the things that has kind of changed, is I'm going to start off at 90 days and slowly work out. Well, actually, that's not true. I typically start at that year and go, okay, I've got 13 sales here. Sure. Let's see what happens if I bring it within 6 months. Right. So it actually goes from a larger to a more narrow view. But yeah, a year, 6 months.
So I could see a scenario where, hey, this very comparable home is no longer. It's not that it's not a viable option to compare, but it falls in a tricky range, or it's a certain distance where there's another house where somebody came in and possibly sold a house for much lower, than you expected, or you would hope for your home, and it would change an appraiser's opinion on value.
it's difficult because these tend to be in larger cities.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So you may have a subdivision of 200 houses with 5 floor plans. And you can just do
Right.
the last 90 days, whereas it doesn't work that way here.
Sure.
Right? Because we have very, very, very few of those types of deals.
Right.
So I hadn't even thought about what you're saying, in that, yeah, maybe 6 months ago this happened, but then somebody. And I'm trying not to think like Geff. I'm trying to think like somebody else.
Sure.
But it sure seems like any appraiser worth their salt would have said, okay, something's goofy here.
Right.
Or I got this one at 110.
Right.
And this one at 285. Right.
It seems like you'd be able to put that together.
And again, I'm not out to defend them at all. It's just ignorance on my part. I just know enough to be dangerous.
Right.
But I know that you certify in your document that goes to Fannie Mae. You certify that there's no bias. Your client then reviews the appraisal. Then that goes to an underwriter for a secondary market.
Sure.
So, typically Bank X is not actually, unless it's an in-house thing, it gets sold to somebody else.
Right.
So that thing is reviewed 3 times before it gets to Fannie Mae.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that we never hear the result of how did all this end up washing out. We just hear the headline of what occurred.
Right.
Well, how did all this end up washing out?
Right.
I mean, that appraiser
give us some detail.
May have been racist, may have been taken out of business, or that thing may have stood up because there's something that just wasn't reported.
Sure.
It's difficult. It's difficult to know from that. But when this first started coming out, again, that group of fellow appraisers that we go back and forth with, it hit our radar, and we kind of all said the same thing. I don't even know how you could turn in a racist appraiser. I mean, there's just too many layers. That you're just going. You would have to be lying.
Sure.
And maybe they are. I mean, never underestimate hate, right? But it's hard for me to really comment on it so much because it just feels so out of line.
Sure.
And again, not to say that it's not happening and that it hasn't happened. I mean, there's, that thing's an onion. I mean, looking at that type of scenario and predominantly black neighborhoods as a whole onion of where you're like, okay, well, and there's questions about, and I've seen this fairly recently, about leaving the neighborhood and using comparable sales from somewhere else. I'm like, but that's not the same investor. And I'm sorry, we kind of think of buyers as investors. So that's not the same. That doesn't just mean somebody who's buying a house to rent out.
I love that you use that. I love that you use that terminology.
Okay.
I love that you use that terminology. I wish that people would. There's a huge, well, not a huge, there's a wave of people, I try my best not to have arguments on social media. You just can't explain things correctly or with either enough passion or, it's just a whole lot. So I like to get into discussions with people, but there's a lot of people right now saying, oh yeah, don't buy a house. It's costing you money. It's a liability, it's no different from renting. You don't actually own the house. And in my head, I'm like, I think y'all are missing the boat. I listen to somebody like Grant Cardone, and he's, oh yeah, I rent my own, I own investment properties. I don't even own the place I live. He not giving you all the details. You find out that his company owns the house that he's renting from. Right. So technically he does. Right. But there's advantages for you. And so I tell a lot of people, look, you're an investor. You're hoping, and it more than likely it will. I caution people the last couple of years, but your house is probably going to appreciate over time. It's going to become more and more valuable as you gain equity in the home. And so now you have opportunity. It's not liquid, but you do have something of value that you can, use to, to get capital to start a business, pass on to your children, and it be something for them later on down the line. I tell everybody, it would be such a great thing if I could have inherited a house from my grandmother and had free rent.
Yeah.
For for years.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm doing is paying taxes on the house, and maintaining it. Those are the kind of things that that tend to bridge, the wealth gap. So I'm actually really glad that y'all. And now, is this your group of friends, fellow appraiser, or is that kind of an appraiser standard?
That's
like,
kind of
these are investors.
Standard language within the industry.
Okay, good.
Because it does cover everybody. It covers everybody from those who are looking to make some money off the house to those who were planning on owner occupying it.
Yeah.
Everybody's an investor.
Sure. Oh, sorry. Were you about to say something?
I don't believe so.
Okay. You told me that you kind of got away from doing like FHA loans.
Correct.
What's your take on that? I tend to think that FHA. I think that people should buy using whatever mode is best suited for their life. FHA appraisals always have me. I can't breathe until the appraisal report comes in. And I went to.
It's okay because the appraiser can't breathe after it's been turned in.
I'm glad y'all are feeling the same pressure.
Right in there.
I'm glad you feel the same. I'm not the only one. But I remember going to a lender that we had in house here. I said, hey, this is when I was early on. Hey, where are the standards, for an FHA appraisal? That way I can prepare my people. We can determine whether or not we need to put this house on the market. And we'll sell to FHA buyers. And she was like, yeah, there's no central place of information. And I was like, how do you do this then?
It's bizarre. So I can't speak to the product itself.
Sure.
I want to say that our first home that we purchased as I know it was an FHA loan.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a personal qualm.
Right.
We did some silly things, but it didn't have anything to do with FHA.
Right.
From an appraiser standpoint, why I quit doing them is because there was too much what I would consider to be inspector work involved in it. The example that I love to give to people is going at least shoulder high in the attic space.
Oh, yeah.
I never found, and I truly looked. I don't know why I picked at that one thing, but I truly looked to try to figure out what am I looking for.
Right.
Okay, I'm shoulder high in here. Now what? And I always assumed, I'll know it when I see it. Whatever it is. But you get registered with them, and then it seemed like, if not every other day, every week, every other week, they're sending you new requirements. And I'm just, you know what? I've got enough conventional and other things going on that I'm not going to mess with this. I may get hungry and do them again, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But for the time being, again, it's not about the product, just from my standpoint. It's just, I'm hanging my hat on a lot here that I don't.
Right.
I'm not qualified to hang my hat on.
And then the responsibility is tagged on that.
Sure.
For
at least 3 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I tell everybody, you're the eyes and ears for the bank.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, and I would not want to. It is literally one of the most frustrating things for me as an agent. I mean, primarily because I want to make sure that the sellers have a good experience, and I try to do my best to set people's expectations up front. Hey, we could sell this way. I don't see a potential problem, but you got to know that there's no way for me to know exactly everything. And like you said, I used to not think of appraisers as inspectors. Mm-hmm. I actually when I'm talking to sellers, I say, hey, we'll have the initial home inspection, the pest inspection, and then the appraiser will come inspect the house to a lesser degree than what you know. But
I don't care if the dishwasher works. Just to kind of give folks an example, I don't care if the dishwasher works. I care if there is a dishwasher. So that's kind of a thing for whenever the appraiser shows up. you don't necessarily need to tell them that the dishwasher doesn't work and this does that whenever I flip the switch and all that sort of thing. I mean, we're checking for the power,
Sure.
we're checking for water, and there are things that we're checking out, but we're not running the systems of the house.
Right. How long does it normally take you? Like
Depends on the size of the house,
Yeah.
But generally 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
Depends on how talky I am.
Sure.
Generally 30 minutes to an hour.
Sure. Are there any, we'll kind of, wrap up this portion, but are there any, things that you see that bring more value as far as if somebody's saying, hey, I want to sell my house, but I want to get the most for it. I want to make some improvements over the next year. What kind of things would you encourage people to focus on that you see brings value?
Kitchens and bathrooms.
Kitchens and bathrooms.
Particularly the main bathroom.
Okay. That's the access bathroom that everybody is. Is that what you mean when you say main bathroom, or do you mean the master?
The master.
Oh, okay. Got you.
Usually those two, and that's kind of been the case for quite some time. During the COVID stuff, people would ask me, I said, put a sign in the front yard and hold your phone.
Right.
You don't need to do anything. What can I do to sell my house?
Just go
put a
outside
sign in the front
yell.
yard.
Actually, just walk outside. Hey, I want to sell my house and get ready for the line.
Truly sold one over dinner one night. It was bizarre.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, kitchens and bathrooms. I acknowledge new windows.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
So. Well, I'm sorry. I may be reading. Let me finish.
Okay.
What you, let me let you finish what you were going to say. Yeah.
I acknowledge new windows, and I report that there are new windows. And, in a lot of ways, I'm like a professional shopper. Is kind of the way that I look at
Sure,
it.
that makes sense.
In some ways.
That makes sense.
And so you do, kind of as we were talking, there is some bias in there. I don't really care about the windows unless they're like old, bad, drafty windows.
Sure.
But they'll sell you windows and tell you, oh, it's going to increase the value. You have no way of knowing that. I don't know where they get their information from, but there's no book that appraisers look at and go, okay, appraisers give or windows give this much money for a home. Doesn't quite work that way.
And they're expensive too.
Very expensive.
They're extremely. Everything about windows are expensive. The screens to cover the windows are expensive. Blinds, all those things are expensive. And that is something, now for tax purposes, I've thought about, hey, maybe we need to change out our windows. Because if I understand correctly, that can be a tax benefit for you. But in my head, I was like, when we bought the house, it's got the windows. I remember being like, we'll be okay. These are single pane windows, but we'll be okay. We'll cover them up or something if we need to. If we need to keep it from being or from losing a lot of energy or something like that. But so that makes sense. Hey, windows. I'll sell somebody's house that's got a pool. What are your thoughts on pools? I've always felt like they don't give as much value as people would like for them to give. What are your thoughts on pools?
And we're not quite there yet for me to reevaluate. When I came into it, the way I was trained was anywhere from like $15,000 to $30,000 for a pool. Why? Well, because that's what I was trained to do.
Sure.
Well, that didn't work for me.
So, oh, really?
Right. So I went and did some research. Oh, I can't remember what my first test was. Well, yeah, I went to Wildwood because it is to my knowledge, it's the largest neighborhood that we've got. And it's all in the same little market area,
Right.
and you can play with square footage and this and that.
Right.
It's the closest thing we've got to being able to compare apples to apples.
Sure.
And so I looked at homes that, by all accounts, are pretty similar to each other. These have pools. These do not. This is adding blank amount of money per square foot. And guess what? I came up to somewhere between $15,000 to $30,000. Then another thing I was told was it's usually about half of the cost of the pool. So if somebody's putting in a pool, based on what? Well, I don't know. That's what we were always told. So I went did the same thing, and guess what? Came up to about half the price of a new pool. Now, recently, I've kind of figured out that it's particularly during COVID, and I don't think it's quite time for me to reevaluate that.
Sure.
But I've been giving pools significantly more in the last 2 or 3 years than I had been prior.
Got you.
Because they just had more people, whether they were consciously staying home or unconsciously staying at home. More people were staying at home. More people wanted an oasis in the backyard.
Sure.
And my whole take on it has always been, well, if they don't want a pool, they're not going to buy a house with a pool.
Right.
So they're not even going to look at it.
Right. That makes sense.
Is the way I look at it myself.
Sure. Yeah, that is a specific, because of course everything that comes with it, you know.
Sure.
I always, you know, I've had very few people that wanted to buy a house with a pool.
My dad used to say everybody should have one in their lives.
Really?
Yeah.
I felt
you get over it after you've had the one.
Well, I've always learned from other people's experiences.
Yeah.
So if you tell me, hey man, I enjoyed it, but man, it was a headache. I'm like, if this is not a good time period for me to have a headache,
Yeah.
I don't want.
Well, and there's a window with kiddos too.
Sure,
and
sure.
I was raised with one, and there came a point where all the birthdays were there until we had zero interest in hanging out at the pool anymore. And so there, you hit that window where you're like, okay, this is not a good investment.
Yeah.
Because the kids are going to get past this pretty quick.
Definitely.
And then mom and dad are rarely going out to the pool. Not to say you
just
never
not-
do. Maybe you
right,
get through
right,
cutting the yard and you go,
right.
nothing feels better. But
It would have to be. It really would have to be an oasis for me to be like, okay, I'm going out to the pool. You know, like I'm gonna have to go out here and be refreshed and get back to whatever I'm doing. So all those things, I've never been one for pool, but I do know some people that, you know, that really enjoy those. And I had thought that just.
I think you probably, along with the kitchens, I do think you probably get a pretty good return on the shininess of new appliances.
Okay.
So don't skip out, and I'm not saying don't skimp. You know, the price points, it all varies.
Sure.
Right, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go get the new Bosch dishwasher.
Of course.
But a shiny new dishwasher, I mean, it makes a difference. It makes a difference to the people looking at the house.
Sure.
It makes a difference to the appraiser.
Now it makes sense why you say you're a professional shopper.
Yeah.
Now that starts to make sense.
I've bought everything I'm difficult to just go into a store and buy a thing now because I'm like, okay, here's 3 different ones. Drives my kid crazy. Can we just buy a juicer? No.
Let's go. Don't you understand? We have to go through the process.
That's right.
Well, as far as like, so when you're going into to do your appraisal inspection, does the condition of, not necessarily like, oh, hey, the carpet is worn right here, but like, oh man, I walked in, I couldn't really see the carpet because there were clothes everywhere. Does that make a difference? You know, if I'm making some,
I don't
not
know
necessarily
how
like the
it
cleanliness.
could not make a difference.
Sure.
And I don't know what the line is. I don't know, you know, what it is in the brain that goes, okay, these people are moving. These are just boxes.
Right.
As compared to, oh, there's clothes all over the place and
Right,
this,
right.
that, and the other. And that was one of the things I wanted to say is that just because you've got a contract, you're not finished selling the house.
You're not.
Unfortunately,
Yep.
I know that you want to be. And again, appraisers can look past. There's something in us that we can look past
Sure.
a box. But if the place looks like my house looks right now, we all live in our houses,
Sure,
okay?
sure.
And I'm not grading it on how neat these folks are. Because you'd walk into mine and find beds unmade and,
Sure.
and dishes here and there. All right. But if you've just given up because we're moving, and I come across it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
there's something in you that just says, "Oh, this is how they roll.
Yeah.
This is how they've taken care of this house."
Yep. And so, like, I actually
That's
do a
human behavior.
you're being a human. So I actually do a pre-inspection, so I do a pre-inspection walkthrough before the inspector, you know, and then it's probably about another 2 weeks or a week and a half or so when the appraiser comes back.
Finally shows
let's
up.
do another pre-inspection before the appraiser gets here. I just had, what is crazy, you know, I just had some appraisal for the first time in, I don't know, in a long time, coming like, hey, they text me 9:00 in the morning. Can I come do the appraisal inspection today at 2? I was like, then that's only 5 hours. Normally you having to schedule it out, you know. Like
they looked at their log and went, oh no.
I need to make some money, you know. So that's a side note. Sorry to get off track, but that just kind of struck me the other day. I was like, oh, the same day appointment.
I've been there and done that. What I'll usually say is, hey, here's the truth.
Yeah.
This slipped up on me.
I need to squeeze this in here if I can.
If I can. If not, totally get it.
Sure.
This is on me.
Sure. I just always want to make sure, you know, I get in and try to say, look, these people are human. Whoever it is coming in here, they come in, they see things everywhere. Let's wipe down the walls. I understand you got kids. Let's wipe down the walls. You know, whatever it took for you to sell the house. I want to sell it to you as the appraiser as well, you know. And now it makes even more sense because I'm looking at you as a professional shopper, and you're placing a value tag on this, and it is, it's not a guesstimate, but it is your opinion based on what you can compare it to, you know. So if there's any chance for me to influence your opinion in a positive direction, then I want to do that. But that highlights to me that there may be a negative direction as well.
Sure.
Like, hey, this house has not been kept up. There's holes in the wall. I imagine we probably need to knock this down,
right?
And value some.
And I would say the other thing, and it all depends, but sometimes you show up at the house and it tends to be the male owner of the house is up on you the entire time you're trying to do your thing. A good appraiser should let them know, all right, I'm gonna measure it, I'm gonna take some photos and some notes, and then we'll sit down and catch up, and you can tell me all the things that you've done to the home, and that should occur. If they don't, then you get up in their face, and I shouldn't say get up in their face, but make sure you get their attention and say, okay, we've replaced the air conditioner, we had this worked on and that worked on, but step back and let that appraiser do their job, because you know they could A, miss something, or B, just kind of get annoyed by the whole thing.
I understand. And again, we're dealing with humans,
right?
You know, so all the and you know and getting you out of the box, being an appraiser, you are human. You have other interests and things like that. You spoke earlier that you were I guess you never. Once you're a musician, you're always a musician. What kind of
I was never a musician, and I never had really any interest in it. It's funny. Mom taught both the kids piano and didn't teach me. I always wanted to be in the booth.
Okay.
And so I went and did some schooling to become a sound engineer, a recording engineer.
Interesting.
And again, there's a whole other story there, but went to the Dallas-Fort Worth area and worked in their premier recording studio there as an intern, and then eventually was paid there. Had to do it all over again. Probably wouldn't have gone to Dallas, but that was as far away from home as the wife was willing to go. And again, I'm not knocking her at all.
And she's from here as well?
She is.
Okay.
She is. We went to high school together.
Gotcha. Where'd y'all go to?
At Pine Tree. Graduated in 93.
I knew that was. You were almost there. Almost there. Right down the road from the greatest. Right there. You know, I'm sorry. I'd give everybody from surrounding areas. You'd be a part of.
Wised up. My kid's in Longview now.
Well, I guess you'll be grafted in through your children. You know, not right. Grandfathered in. You'll be grandchild in. You know.
I've got a lot of pride with Pine Tree, and I love what they've got going on. They've got going on now.
A lot of area schools.
We've got great schools.
We do.
I mean, we really have great schools.
Some of them have a bad rap, and I'm like, I'm not. I mean, you have to have some. You have to be realistic, you know, and something. But and I've always, from the time that I've met you, you've been, invested in the community. And I really appreciate that. One thing, I always do a little snooping as far as community-wise and music-wise. You share a lot of local artists. Is there anybody in particular that you really like to enjoy or
Not so much. I mean, I love what Arts Longview has accomplished and is getting accomplished, and you know, part of that goes back to the Museum of Fine Arts. They've been, I mean, you know, there's been some other entrepreneurs, and along with their effort, along with the arts effort, has turned downtown into something I never, growing up here, could have never imagined Longview being. We had a skate contest where they shut down an entire block of the city of Longview, and me and some of my other old skateboard buddies who used to get chased by police down there are looking around going, can you believe that this is
sanctioned
happening?
by the city?
And I mean, look around us. There's murals, beautiful murals everywhere in this at this block that we're standing at. And I think that has to do a lot with them. And it has to, you know, I'm not going to throw out a whole lot of people, but I don't think, I don't think it can be overstated a difference that Lakey Henson made. If you're familiar with him, so he's the guy that does a lot of the sidewalk art. I think he, to my knowledge, he was kind of the first to come out and just start doing art in public. And I think that has helped with the explosion of art that we're seeing all over the place. I love it. I mean,
me too.
I love living in Longview and growing up just like, you know, so many other kids. I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. I love it here. I mean, there's parts of it that there's still plenty of it that I'm like, ugh. But we've got it going on in a lot of ways.
I mean, and especially when you start comparing to other similar sized cities, you know, I have a great appreciation for our entire city. I mean, some of our city gets a bad rap, and I'm just like, in comparison to some of the places that I've been, this is actually, you know, really good. And speaking to, you know, to the art that's downtown, I remember when you know, we did the little tile squares in that was probably elementary school, and they're downtown now. You know, I think if you're going to have a city that is vested in the growth of the city, you're gonna have to find ways to allow people to be a part of what you can experience. You know, so to be able to see that growth, I'm so glad they started turning their attention to downtown, because I used to love going downtown. When I was young, I used to love going downtown. And
I probably loved it for a different reason. Being a skateboarder, there was never anybody there, right? So we could go skate down there. But now there's too many people. I guess you still can, but it's not quite the same.
You might have run into some people playing Pokemon Go or something like that now. Do you ever feel the desire to pick up a skateboard?
Yeah, I do it from time to time.
Okay.
It's kind of difficult.
I know there's a few parks around here.
There are, but these kids get up so early. So me and some other old men have thought, okay, we're going to go there really early in the morning before the kids show up. No, they're already there.
It's so funny. I can't understand it, but I see genuine passion for skateboarding. Like when a kid wants to skateboard, it's like they dive deep into being a skateboarder, in my opinion.
And it's a community.
You know, and it's a community.
And that park down there in particular, it was a long time before I'd gone. Dodson Action Sports Complex was, or it's within, I forget the name, Ingram Park.
Right there,
From what I can tell, that seems to have really given, I mean, there's kids coming from all over that neighborhood skateboarding who would have not been skateboarding.
Right.
And there's it's a big diverse group of kids, from little kids to older kids, and they all encourage each other. We didn't really do that so much whenever I was getting started with skateboarding. Wasn't that? It was just, it was more of a boys club kind of thing, you know.
I understand.
So in football, you got some ribbing. Well, skateboarding was the same way. But they're all really supportive of each other, and I think that's a great thing they've got going on down there.
Definitely. I know now you're involved in Longview Community Ministries. Can you explain a little bit what Longview Community Ministries does and why it's important to our city?
Sure. Longview Community Ministries has a food box. So families can go and get registered who need a little help with some food, and I believe it's every month they can come back through and get a box of food that's donated from local businesses, and some of it we purchase from the food bank.
Okay.
There is that. There is a thing called College Connections, which is some of our campuses here in town. Students can get registered and come by, and they get there's a basic box, but then we've also got items that they can go down the table and kind of grocery shop on their own and take groceries home. And I mean, that's...
How often do they do that? Is that
That has been every month. We've been at a break from November and December, or maybe December, January.
Sure.
We were there in November because it was cold. So I think December and January there's been a break. We'll get back started in February.
Okay.
Also, there's Meals with Love. So folks who can't get out and need a hot meal, we take hot meals to them. We also do some assistance for, you can't show up every month and say I need help with the electric bill, but we do some bill assistance for utilities.
Help some people get back on their feet.
And rent. And also, I'm not sure how often on Saturdays, but if you need to have a tooth pulled, you can go in and have a tooth extraction.
Whoa, that's interesting. I've
probably forgotten something, but that's
okay.
That's in a nutshell what Longview Community Ministry does.
Sure.
We need volunteers and we need board members. So if anybody's interested, get in touch with me.
That was going to be my question. What would probably be the most important or the most impactful ways that a concerned citizen could get involved and help? Is there something that the everyday person could do?
Probably getting set up to be a volunteer right now. I mean, the
volunteering to do
there's any number of things.
Sure.
It could be doing the Meals with Love. It could be helping out with College Connect. I mean, there's almost always something to do. But the nonprofits are no different than anybody else.
Right.
The economy got out of whack and food got shot through the roof.
Sure.
And that hits nonprofits.
Sure.
They have to pay just as much, or maybe not just as much, but their prices went up too. So money, money, and volunteerism, and just kind of word of mouth in case they come across somebody who falls into one of these categories that needs a little scratch on the back, because a lot of us are just one hiccup away from needing a little help with something.
Of course. Where's Longview Community Ministries located?
All right, I come in from 2nd Street. I believe the front entry is on 3rd Street, about 2 blocks away from Highway 80, 2 blocks south of Highway 80.
So either street from, McDonald's. So if you turn in by McDonald's from 80, going back towards downtown, you should be able to.
You will be at the front doors.
Be at the front door,
which is where you need to be.
Yeah. Geoff, anything else in the upcoming events or anything that I saw? Now I did look and see that you talked about the Four Seasons. I saw that is coming up.
I saw today. I saw today that it is sold out, and I'm thrilled.
Sold out.
That thing it's a little radical, and when I saw that they were doing it, I couldn't believe it. So, a guy named excuse me, a little buzz in the back of my throat. A composer named Max Richter completely redid Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and it's unlike what we all know, whether you know it or not. You know some of the Four Seasons, but he went and reconstructed this thing, and our symphony is doing his version of it in a much smaller scale. That's all going to be candle lit. When I saw it, I could not believe that the city of Longview was doing it. So I started telling everybody, y'all go see, even if you don't love classical music yet,
and I love classical.
Go and check this out and support this thing, so that they'll keep trying some different things.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a pretty different thing for the Longview Symphony, and I want them to feel supported and stepping out and trying something a little different.
Selling out a show will definitely invigorate people that come back and do something like that again. I think it's super important to make sure that we are exposed continuously to the arts, mainly just because you tap into a different part of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're making decisions all the time and trying to figure out this and putting things together, you know, just for daily life. You know, but when you encounter arts, especially music speaks to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't walk into and look at a painting and decipher anything. That's just my brain just can't get there. But music
Mm-hmm.
has always been a place where it brings reflection. You know, it brings perspective. Just by sitting and listening and taking all that in. So I'm a big proponent. My wife is even more so. She leans not only into music but into dance and theater, all those different things. You know, I hope we can do a better job of, as a community, supporting different things around here. Is there anything else around here that you art wise that you get involved with? I know Longview Museum of Fine Arts. Is there anything else around here that you feel do a great job?
There's some brainstorming going on about how to do some more unconventional art exhibitions
Sure.
outside of a gallery, and we've kind of looked at some immersive stuff. There's some of us that are kind of throwing some eyes out, or throwing some ideas out there to try to figure out how to make it a little bit more fun, a little
Sure.
bit more inclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, zero disrespect, but we need to be thinking black tie events are great for folks who like black tie events.
Exactly.
We need some things outside of the fine
Exactly.
arts world, some things outside of the black tie event where it feels accessible to
Sure.
to more people.
Exactly. That makes sense.
And so we're kind of we're playing around figuring out, okay, I had this crazy idea. Here's why that doesn't work, or you know. So keep
It's
your
in the
eyes
works.
open.
It's in the works.
You might start seeing some fun stuff
It's in the
popping up
works.
here and
Awesome.
there.
Awesome. Well, Geoff, I really appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you so much for coming through. You've educated me on a lot of different things. I appreciate your perspective. Appreciate all those things that you were able to share with us today.
It's been a privilege.
And the privilege is all mine. Y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning in. How can they contact you for, let's say somebody needs an appraisal? What's the best way to contact you?
Throwing it out into the World Wide
Do
Web.
you want to throw that
would
into
be
the?
probably my email address. Would
Okay,
be,
all right.
Grimes Appraisal. So that's GrimesAPPRAISAL@gmail.com. Probably the best way to get me. Or my personal account is on Facebook. So if you're just interested in.
Sure.
And some of the weird things that I'm kind of interested in, you can always check that out.
Now, don't go sending crazy emails, complaining about your appraiser or anything like that. This is for business purposes. If you're going to utilize that, no. But thank you so much again,
You bet.
y'all. This has been the Success Estate Podcast. Please like, share, and comment below if you took anything away from the information that you received today that you would like. For other people to see and notice as well. It does a ton as far as being able for other people to find the show. So and if there's some things or a subject or topic that you would like for me to explore with interesting people in our city, please feel free to comment as well. Thank y'all so much and be blessed.